Morning, fam. So today we read the letter of Philemon. It's a short letter, but extremely personal. There's three main people that this letter is about, but in the short 25 verses of this letter, there's actually 11 people mentioned. So it's extremely an extremely personal letter. Paul wrote it to Philemon, who he had a relationship with in the past. Don't know the exact nature of it, but it was very close. And at one point in this letter, Paul tells Philemon that Philemon owes his own self to Paul. So I don't know if that meant that Paul, introduced him to Jesus, or maybe Paul saved his life, or maybe I don't know. Paul helped him build a successful business. I don't know what it means, but they were close personal friends. The other person that this letter is about is the is Philemon's former slave Onesimus. Now, when we think of slavery, we think of like the transatlantic slave trade. And all of these images of abuse and brutality come to our mind. Um, in the New Testament times, there were different types of slavery, just as there were during the transatlantic slave trade and throughout all of history, frankly. But predominantly, it was the an employer employee type of relationship under what is known as the it'll come to me indentured servitude. Ooh, I don't know why I couldn't remember that, but and that's where I agree to go work for you for a number of years, um, to pay off a debt, to save money, or whatever the purpose is. And then at the end of our agreed upon time, I'm free. But during that time, I'm your slave. You own me. I work for you. And and typically there was not a lot of abuse, physical abuse, and all of that that was involved in that type of slavery. Although sometimes there was. Well, Onesimus was a slave of Philemon. And at some point, Onesimus left. He fled him and ended up ministering to Paul when Paul was in prison. And Paul led him to Christ. And now Paul is sending Onesimus back to Philemon and and telling Philemon, hey, he's your former slave, but now he's a brother in Christ, and I want you to treat him as a brother in Christ. And and if he owes you anything, again, because it was an indentured servitude relationship, so he went in with an agreement that Onesimus did not fulfill, right? And so he at least owed him for lost wages and service and all of that. Um, but Paul says that if he owes you anything, charge it to my account. I'll pay for it. Um, and then kind of gives a little dig, reminds him, but, I do want to remind you that you owe me your very self. Um, but he says, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not commanding you. I'm just asking you in love to realize that he's now a brother and to treat him as such. Well, this letter it brings up a lot of really interesting things, but I think the main thing that struck me this time in my read of it is that in Christ we're all the same. It doesn't matter your position in life, your station in life, if you're really super smart, if you're really super articulate, if you're really super beautiful, if you're a tremendous athlete, if you're super wealthy, or if you're broke, if you're poor, if you're homeless, if you've been abandoned, if whatever. If you're in Christ, we're all the same. We're all sinners saved by his grace, struggling with our sin to try to live holy lives walking in the Spirit. And that's a situation that each and every single one of us is in. And Paul is saying, listen, this is the situation with your former slave, Onesimus. He's coming back to you because that's the right thing to do. He owes you, again, at least the lost work that he incurred when he left you. And so, it shows us that all the relationships are the same, and yet we still have responsibility. And so, I don't know, I'm just still kind of processing all of that in my mind. But those two things, we have responsibility in this life to do what's right. Um, and we are all one in Christ. We're all at the same level in Christ. Nobody, there's no distinction, as Paul puts it. So, yeah, I don't know what that means for your life, and I'm still thinking about what that means for my life, but those are two things to keep in mind as we walk through this life with one another.